So, welcome to today's webinar, Successful Leadership Strategies in Today's AI World, Practical Examples which you can implement, presented by me, Alan Herrity. So, welcome everyone. I'm Alan Herrity. I'm the Director of Momentum Search and Selection. We exclusively work with senior leaders across digital, technology, and business transformation. So AI is something that we've been talking to many stakeholders about, and actually was the catalyst for this webinar, which we've done quite a lot of work on. So hopefully you'll find it compelling. Today is not about the technology. It's about the leadership and operating model questions that underpin these conversations. The majority of what I am sharing is from discussions with senior managers and executives both this year and last year, as well as some information from the public domain. So the gap between AI ambition and AI execution is not a technology gap. In some cases, AI adoption has often been treated as something that the technology function needs to lead and embed into the organization. However, this depends on your organizational structure and whether the technology function is empowered and ready to assist your organization on the AI transformation journey. I'd like to lean on some recent global research here, which is reinforcing a similar pattern. Despite rapid advances in AI capability and record levels in investment globally, many organizations are still struggling to move from experimentation to measurable impact. As mentioned, our insights are based on direct conversations and executive search briefings from last year and this year. So the constraint is not necessarily the access to technology. It is the ability of leadership teams to translate that capability into what needs to be done and how the work actually gets done. So the gap between AI ambition and execution is not a technology gap. It is a leadership operating model and organizational change opportunity. And I emphasize the word opportunity. Boards are feeling they're not moving fast enough. In some cases, delivery teams are trying to build the foundations whilst being pressured to accelerate. Some organizations are seeking to appoint leadership with AI experience without first understanding what business challenges they need to address. And in others, AI executives have been appointed, but in some cases, their role carries little authority. So in today's session, we're going to cover 5 different areas. We'll cover why this is a leadership challenge and not a technology one. We'll cover 3 tensions I'm seeing consistently across Australian organizations, 4 organizations who we can learn from, and 1 clear lesson from each. 6 practical shifts that you can use and questions worth taking back to your leadership team. So just for everybody in terms of timekeeping, this was meant to run for about 30 minutes. Practiced it yesterday. It's going to run for about 40 minutes, and then there'll be 10 to 15 minutes for QA at the end. If you don't have time to stay for the whole duration, please feel free to drop off. You'll get a copy of the recording and the slides. I know that people have given up their lunchtime and fitness for this. So thank you very much for doing that. And I'll try and get through things as quickly as possible by being concise as well. When we get to the Q&A piece at the end, if you want to be anonymous, please post anonymously. And if you're happy for me to read out your name, just post as who you are, because I'll just automatically read out your name and address the question. So I hope that makes sense. So the leadership challenge. The most consistent observation across conversations with senior leaders in both 2025 and 2026 is not that organizations lack AI tools, budget, or ambition. Many have all 3. The observation is that the leadership conditions required for AI to succeed at scale are not necessarily in place at every organization. In some cases, senior leaders are personally engaging with AI. They are not waiting for it to be done for them. In other cases, senior leaders are reluctant to engage it with AI, and it's a big thing for them to work through. This is a very confronting time for senior leaders and executives, and everybody has their roles and responsibilities. And we really understand that this is challenging for many leaders. As mentioned, some boards are pushing for speed, in some cases based on gut feel about what competitors are doing, often with no real data to support or contradict this feeling. Delivery teams understand that AI cannot progress without clear data quality, data ownership, data governance, and decision rights. And some organizations are progressing slowly due to this. Others are finding quick wins and ways for the organization to progress in preparation for scaling. I think it's pretty clear that AI is a potential accelerator if you select the appropriate use cases and business problems. In some cases, organizations are appointing senior AI leaders without clarity on what the business problems their role is there to solve, or the authority and decision rights to actually solve them. I'll elaborate on that later. There's a few controversial viewpoints that I feel are on the market at the moment. This can create uncertainty on who is responsible for what within the organization. And this pattern has been now consistently observed beyond individual organizations. Again, I'd like to rely on the global research into AI adoption that shows while AI capabilities are advancing rapidly, many enterprises remain stuck in experimentation. And we'll show some stats on that later. The barrier is not technical readiness. It is a leadership alignment, decision making, and the ability to rethink how work is structured and executed. So you may have seen McKinsey's research, and it's worth noting here, in many cases, C-suite leaders are more than twice as likely to say that employee readiness is the barrier to AI adoption than to identify leadership as the challenge. Yet the same research found that employees say that they're ready. So the result is an avoidable cycle. Investment approved, AI leader appointed, early progress is visible. Then delivery expectations can collide with legacy systems, internal complexity, politics, who's responsible for what. This can be followed by setbacks, change fatigue, and a growing skepticism directed at the AI itself rather than having the right organizational system in place. My humble opinion is this is not the first time we've been here. Obviously, it's a huge, monumental organizational change for everyone. But remember Agile. The organizations that succeeded with Agile were the ones whose leaders who created the conditions and the psychological safety for it to work. So the failure isn't technology. You need to have the right operating model to ensure that your business can evolve and thrive. So I'm going to move into part one. So the three tensions you'll recognize. These are the patterns showing up most consistently across Australian organizations right now. I suspect that at least one will feel very close to home. And if not, you're doing really well. Number one, board urgency versus organizational readiness. Some boards feel the organization is not moving fast enough. The fear of falling behind is a consistent theme in boardrooms across Australian organizations right now. As mentioned, there are cases where the fear is largely based on perception and not evidence. And meanwhile, the people closest to the work do need the right support, guidance, frameworks, and guardrails to succeed together. A transformation executive who I've known for more than 10 years told me that the board are concerned about being left behind. However, there was no tangible evidence to support that particular concern. Now, let me be clear, we need to plan for this fundamental change. However, you also need to run your own race. Understanding where you as an organization are before you decide how fast you go is the key to success. And unlike previous transformations, AI does not follow a predictable or linear return profile. The value horizon is uncertain. The capability is evolving rapidly in real time, really, really fast. And this increases pressure at board level. And you need that key internal data to make the right and informed decisions. So, two, personal experimentation versus organizational constraints. So, some executives are actively using AI tools in their personal time, and they have some constraints at work, often due to governance frameworks, is existing technology stack. But the great thing is that bottom-up innovation is happening, and this is great and it should be encouraged. I feel there's an opportunity to bring business units and teams together to share learnings and ensure consistency in ways of working. Now, this does require a lot of time and investment. However, it's very worthwhile. Some of the things I'm going to say today will contradict each other, and that's because I've got different viewpoints. So it depends on your organization, but I'll give you one example. A chief information officer recently explained to me that his particular organization decided to hire junior software engineers who have a good understanding of AI because the feeling was they have no limiting beliefs with regards to what is possible and they can bring new ideas and innovation. He felt that they also have less fear of this monumental change which we're experiencing. Now, I'm 50. This does not mean that AI is for the younger generation. Far from it. We can all learn. Imagine combining your years of experience in your particular domain with the power of AI. So, ensuring that you have the right conditions for your teams to experiment and progress is one of the key factors to success. A chief transformation officer explained to me that he has built several agents to solve the problems which his teams are facing. He uses Gemini at home, Microsoft Copilot at work, and not because Copilot is better, it's because the organization is a Microsoft user and has several governance requirements. Now, I think everybody would know that the tech is changing so fast. So I advise you to do your due diligence and make sure you make the right choices for your organization. I feel that the opportunity is to evolve teams so that they can adapt to new ways of working with the right support, coaching, training, guardrails, and SOPs where required. When I asked this particular executive what needs to change, he was unambiguous in his feeling. He said executives need to stop waiting for others to figure this out. They need to lean in, own it personally, and then educate the board, their peers, and their teams. Do not delegate this. Do it yourself first. Now, this is the standard that he holds himself to. And this is the standard that he believes that every leader should be held to. Now, I'm fully cognizant that not everybody feels like this, and this is confronting for a lot of people. But I do urge you not to let perfection be the enemy of progress. Three, hiring for the end state versus building for where you are. In some cases, organizations are appointing senior AI leaders for addressing the following. We'll talk about one of our roles, which we're working on later, perhaps in the Q&A. I do urge you to address the following before proceeding. Understand what are the roles and responsibilities of the new AI leader versus what the technology function and other business units are responsible for. What are the overlaps between these responsibilities? What are the outcomes the business is looking for and who is responsible for these? What is the role of technology, the function as the enabler? Do you actually need an AI leader or function and why? Or do we have a leader or function within the organization who knows company culture, how we work, and who can do the role? It's important to get all of the above right in order to avoid complex challenges further downstream. In my opinion, appointing an AI leader without this due diligence will mean that within 12 to 18 months, the role can stall and it will not deliver on the intended business outcomes. The challenge is not the technology, it's not the person hired. It is the gap between the role that was created and the organization that is doing what the organization is doing to support this person and their success. The leaders who will navigate this well are those who will recognize that the work is not just technical. This is an organizational change. You can take a series of deliberate supported steps. And the organizations that take those steps together with their leaders will be properly equipped. And these are the organizations that will make AI work in the way they always hoped that it would. So just on that point about the AI leader, so I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago, and the person on that podcast said organizations have to absolutely appoint an AI leader and it should be separate from technology. And then I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day from a technology executive who I respect, who said, if organizations are looking to appoint an AI leader and it's not the chief technology officer, they've actually made the wrong appointment of the chief technology officer in the first place. Now, that's two completely different views. My view is it depends. It depends on your organization, and you need to do that due diligence to make sure that you make the right decision for your organization. You may or may not need to appoint an AI leader. Part two, four Australian organizations who we can learn from. So the organizations making progress are not necessarily ahead because they have better technology. They've moved ahead because they've made clearer leadership decisions earlier, particularly around governance, operating model, areas for quick wins, and how AI work translates into value. So I'll share four Australian organizations, each doing something specific and tangible, each one with a clear lesson. And we're sharing these examples to give you an insight into what is possible whilst understanding that everyone needs to run their own race. First example is from the public domain. Bendigo Kangan Institute, governance as a product. So many organizations are still running AI pilots. At Bendigo Kangan Institute, they're shipping products. An executive at Bendigo Kangan Institute has described their approach publicly. You can have a look at that on LinkedIn. The product at the center of BKI's approach is the Safe AI Agent, a single source of truth for AI usage guidance, policy, risk frameworks, governance, and it's accessible across the organization. The product was built to address a real and growing operational problem. As the AI scales inside the organization, the questions multiply. What is approved? What is safe? What data can be used? What are the boundaries? Now, When people can not get clear answers on these things, one of two things may happen. Adoption might slow because people are waiting for permission, or risk increases because people proceed without it. So BKI's framing of the next phase of AI maturity is important. It's not just about deploying tools, but embedding the guardrails and support systems that enable progress at scale. Governance here is acting as an enabler of scale, a pattern increasingly seen in organizations successfully moving beyond the pilot stage. And building governance into how your organization operates from the start enables adoption. Adding it after the fact tends to slow things down. So, next example, I'd like to thank Daniel Pludek, who is the Chief Information Officer of Kip McGrath Education Centres, for allowing me to share this information. So, this is about mid-market speed with governance. So, assumption can be made that AI governance slows things down. Kip McGrath Education Centres is evidence to the contrary. So, they are a global tutoring organisation, and that demonstrates measurable outcomes tied directly to governance and maturity. AI governance was embedded at the executive level from the outset. And as you can see from the slide, the results are clear. So Monty AI is an AI platform with tools such as safe on-screen helpers for students. And that has been adopted by approximately 76% of students. 97% unit cost reduction in AI-driven communications, and school curriculum content development cycles reduced from months to days, which is just amazing. So this shows what happens when the leadership does detailed research into the business problems they're looking to solve and establishes the right guardrails, technology, and approach for success. I wouldn't describe Kid McGrath Education as an organization with lots of money to throw at the problem. I think one clear lesson here is governance and speed can be achieved concurrently if you adopt the right approach. Now, a large scale organization, well known, Wesfarmers, will talk about scale and literacy. I wanted to say thank you to Leah Bolter. She's an EGM from Wesfarmers One Digital, and we had a good chat about this. So this was really interesting information. So, along with most probably Commonwealth Bank and Macquarie Bank, this is one of the most visible enterprise AI deployments in Australia, and a clear example of what it looks like when AI literacy becomes a clear leadership expectation. So in November 2025, Wesfarmers partnered with OpenAI to deploy ChatGPT Enterprise across the group. They have also partnered with Microsoft and Google Cloud. So alongside customized training programs designed for specifically for the organization, AI was positioned not as a technology initiative, but as a productivity and growth lever, for demand forecasting, customer service, marketing effectiveness, and conversational commerce. Training is being delivered alongside the technology. And after looking at how other leading organizations were approaching this, including conversations with Commonwealth Bank and organizations in the US, Wesfarmers concluded that AI transformation for them could not sit with technology alone. The whole executive group needed to get across it, and business leadership sponsorship was what made the difference for them. Rob Scott and the divisional MDs from Wesfarmers businesses played a central role in this, and each division now owns its own priority initiatives at executive level. Wesfarmers also made AI training accessible well beyond their corporate functions, including frontline retail employees across the group, through their learning management system, set up in a way that it could reach people without corporate email accounts or laptops. They set up a dedicated responsible AI team, and embedded directly into projects. The intent was to make governance part of how things were done. Of course, some things took longer than expected and needed iteration. That's pretty normal, I would say. It's worth acknowledging that, but rapid learning was a deliberate part of the journey, and it's certainly not a sign of failure. And as you can see on the slide, Managing Director Rob Scott said the following: "We believe Australian businesses should adopt AI-driven solutions to remain globally competitive. There is a growing argument that AI literacy is not just a technical capability, it has become a leadership expectation." I think the one clear lesson from this is when the most senior leader in an organization names AI literacy as a clear expectation, it tends to shift what leaders at every level feel accountable for. And my humble opinion is any organizational change should have strong support from the top. So this is not about scale. It's about clarity. You do not need 100,000 employees to set clear leadership expectations. You need to decide what is the right approach for your organization and then stay the course. West Farmers have taken an approach which suits their business. The next example is a different approach which aligns to what this particular company needed. So this is an example of an Australian superannuation organization, and the focus is on governance and ownership in practice. And I'd say it's one of the most practical examples that I've witnessed with regards to AI governance and ownership. And it was shared with me by an executive at a superannuation company. So the executive has allowed me to share the following progress. So implementation of AI governance framework and supporting guardrails, the introduction of the concept of AI owners, so individuals who take accountability for the agreed processes and workflows. Each executive is aligned to own and deliver at least 2 AI use cases as part of their OKRs and performance reviews. They identified a large pipeline of use cases across 8 business units. And they established a small governance team to support leadership capability, training, and confidence in delivering those use cases. They also put in place an agreed risk assessment approach for AI initiatives, which needed executive sign-off for requirements based on low, medium, and high risk ratings. And an interesting one was the flexibility for senior managers and executives in different parts of the organization to select AI tools as long as company data and IP were not impacted. So I think this is what things look like when an organization decides to treat AI adoption as a leadership and operating model question. And the leaders work together, supported by the technology function as an enabler. One clear lesson here for me is assigning named accountability for the AI use cases embedded into performance frameworks is one of the most practical ways to move from planning to delivery. Now, I think it's really important that you need to support your leaders and executives to navigate this. Not everyone is AI savvy, and this is okay. So part 3, 6 shifts that you can make. These are not theoretical, they come from what is actually happening in several organizations. Number 1, declare AI fluency as mandatory leadership literacy, which we've mentioned. In many organizations, AI literacy is becoming a baseline expectation across leadership at all levels. This is a clear expectation for anyone leading a team or function. Organizations should be providing the time and the conditions for their leaders to learn and then help their teams navigate this same journey. Now, research suggests that many Australian organizations still have a meaningful progress to make in this area. Research from EY, that big number 6% there, said that only 6% of Australian organizations mandate enterprise-wide AI training. and 1 in 4 have no preparation plan at all. I think if I go back to the West Farmers example, it shows what a declared clear set of expectations looks like at scale. But scale is not the point. A prepared leadership team is. So for those asking where to start, there are credible pathways which exist locally. I've heard good things about Melbourne Business School, the University of Sydney, and Monash's Business School's AI for Leaders program, which was developed with Whole Grain AI, who are based in Melbourne. And then locally, yeah, globally, sorry, you've got Harvard Business School, MIT Sloan, Oxford Said, and INSEAD, of course. So these pathways exist for many leaders. The practical next step is simply identifying which one fits your organizational context and making a start. My takeaway here is to set your expectations early and then build the pathway to support it. Number two, require every executive to redesign at least one workflow using AI. I gave an example earlier about the superannuation organization. So this is not a classroom exercise. It's a real workflow and a real outcome shared with your leadership team and their teams. Let me be clear, this is not a competition. It's a way for leaders to learn alongside each other and to help each other progress. As mentioned, the Chief Transformation Officer I spoke to has built his own agents and is a really well practically thought AI leader. When executives take the time to do it themselves, the questions that you will ask will get sharper. The investment decisions which you will make will get better. You'll have a better sense of whether vendors' claims are plausible or not. And this comes from being a leader and embarking on the learning journey yourself. I really like this practical example of what it can look like at operational level. Um, Within Bunnings, everybody loves Bunnings. They have the tools for the frontline staff. They're called zebras, and they, go around the stores and they can use that now to using AI for product identification. They're using image recognition, multilingual customer assistance. We've got a very diverse community in Australia, and real-time on-floor support via these mobile devices. So this was built to solve specific operational problems and not necessarily to showcase the technology. So my advice is to identify the challenges first and then choose the technology. My takeaway from this is that all leaders should lean into AI and share their learning, with each other and their teams. 3, make AI use cases a standard ELT agenda item. When AI use cases sit permanently on the ELT agenda, AI stops being something which is managed on the side of a desk and it becomes something which is a specific way of how the organization is being run. Then blockers can surface. You can look at how things can actually be resolved. Progress is visible to the people who have the authority to act on it. And the question of who is accountable for AI outcomes has a clear answer. The executives and leaders as a collective. When AI sits on the LT agenda, it becomes a part of how the organization runs. Another example with West Farmers, they embedded AI champions across the organization, people whose job it is to spread ownership, support, peer learning, build confidence at every level. And the central team was an enabler, not the owner. This is very much like how you would set up change champions for organizational change. So my takeaway here is to keep this as a standing ELT agenda item until it becomes no longer necessary or it becomes part of BAU. 4, set clear decision rights between humans and AI agents. Now, this is quite technical. I'm not going to get into too much technology, but these are my learnings. So AI agents can do your coding. However, humans need to decide what needs to be coded, the quality of the code, and what outcomes you're looking for. You need to put the necessary guardrails around this. I think it's clear that software engineers are really proud of their craft, and the evolution of their role, in my humble opinion, is key to success here. A senior leader in the insurance sector explained to me that her organization operates within a complex ecosystem of insurers and partners where data ownership and accountability is already quite complicated. So if something goes wrong with an AI-driven process, the accountability question needs to be answered before the incident and not after. On the slide there, you'll see Australia's National AI Centre addressed this directly in its updated guidance for AI adoption in October 2025, naming human oversight and clear decision rights as two of the six essential governance practices for Australian organisations. Going back to the superannuation organisation I mentioned, they have that practical model, the risk assessment framework with executive sign-off based on low, medium, and high risk ratings. I think this enables the organization, the leaders to have clarity and accountability. My takeaway on this is to ensure that you have the right checks and balances in place when using AI agents, and humans are still very much important here. Not long to go now. 5, link AI capability to career pathways and succession. So organizations have the opportunity to review their operating models and ensure that AI capability forms part of how they develop and promote leaders. When AI fluency is linked to career progression, it stops being optional. The incentive structure changes. The conversations leaders have with their managers and teams will change. Now, I'm really cognizant this would concern leaders who are not yet confident with AI. That concern is very legitimate, and the appropriate response for me is that you need to support your leaders. A chief data and AI officer who I work with closely put it simply. He said, if you have the aptitude and the curiosity, you can absolutely be retrained. The opportunity for the organization is to enable this. And I think the superannuation example makes this concrete. Use AI use case delivery embedded into executive OKRs and performance reviews. Takeaway here is when AI capability appears in career development and progression, it signals to leaders that this is a genuine organizational priority. Okay, last shift. This one's maybe a bit controversial, but I'll say it anyway. Hold board members to the same standards as executives. So boards cannot govern what they don't understand. If AI fluency is non-negotiable for executives, in my view, and others' views, the same should apply to board members. Some organizations are beginning to include AI literacy in board skills matrix assessments. That is the direction this is heading. Now, if AI fluency has clear expectations for executives, the same logic should apply. However, board members are naturally concerned about accountability. Who's responsible if something goes wrong? A cybersecurity breach involving an AI system, a consequential decision made by an AI agent without the adequate oversight. Now, these are legitimate concerns, and I've had executives say to me they're less interested in board roles now because of this situation. I think it's important to build that literacy and agree on governance frameworks before something goes wrong. And this is creating a lot of debate at executive and board level. So my takeaway is board level AI literacy is a fundamental requirement for corporate governance. So I'm just going to share some numbers with you. The opportunity ahead for Australian organisations is significant, and the evidence shows that many are moving in the right direction. Deloitte's State of AI in the Enterprise report, It was based on surveys of over 3,000 board and C-suite leaders across 24 countries. And it offers an encouraging baseline. 61% of Australian respondents report that AI is already improving efficiency and productivity. And that is real progress, and it reflects genuine leadership commitment. What the research also reveals is where the next wave of value is waiting to be unlocked. Only 28% of the Australian respondents have so far moved 40% or more of their AI pilots into production. Now, this means the majority of organizations have successfully proven what AI can do, and now they stand on the threshold of scaling it. Similarly, only 22% of Australian companies report having a highly advanced model for agent governance, and that is quite complex. But these are not signs of failure. They are natural tension points of a technology that is maturing faster than any organization can fully anticipate. And research suggests that many organizations or many Australian organizations still have meaningful progress to make in this area. As mentioned, EY found that only 6% of Australian organizations mandate enterprise-wide AI training, and 1 in 4 have no preparation plan at all. I think it will be interesting to see what happens when the next set of data comes out for those organizations who have financial reporting periods that end on 30th of June. So, 4 questions for your leadership team to take home. First, what does the executive team need to decide in order to make genuine progress? Not the technology team, the leadership team as a collective. Second, where can you get some early wins? Where can you build confidence and traction without needing everything to be perfect in the first place? Third, if the organization feels stuck right now, what would you actually need to change? Not what would be nice to change, but what actually needs to change. And fourth, which I've covered somewhat, is are the right conditions in place for a newly appointed AI leader to succeed? If you're thinking about making a senior hire in this space, or you recently made one, that question is really worth being honest about. So I'd like to finish with a closing thought, and this is from Dr. Jen Fromm. She's one of the leading organizational change professionals in Australia. And she says, it is never too late to start. Give yourself some grace. The risk is not in starting imperfectly. It is in not starting at all. And I think that's exactly the right mindset for this moment. Not racing, not panicking, not waiting for perfect conditions to arrive. Maybe they never fully will. Just starting with the right support and honesty about where you are and the understanding that no one has completely worked this out yet. So thanks very much for your patience. It took a little bit longer than expected, and I'll stop sharing now and we'll see whether we've got any questions coming up. Okay, so I have a question here from Bernie McMullen. He said, great session, Alan. I'm finding the biggest challenges. The highest value use case isn't the one that executives feels confident or brave enough to trial. Quantifying the missed opportunity can be a challenge to measure the new tech. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's key to go after the highest value use case, but sometimes organizations want to go with the least risk first, just to test that and then move forward. So I think, that's a really good point for Bernie. Thanks so much for sharing. Just see if I've got any other questions. Don't seem to have. Oh, here we go. Bridget Colombo. Excellent sessions. Some organizations have a GM of innovation. Surely AI leadership is now embedded into this role. Is this what you see? It's a good question, Bridget. So it depends. So the superannuation organization that I've mentioned, this is coming from the collective, all of the executives, and it's being enabled by technology. In the podcast that I listened to the other day, the person who was talking said this shouldn't be something which is done off the side of your desk, and you absolutely need an AI executive. I think it depends. It depends on the organization, depends on your structure, depends on whether you've got the right person within the organization. I know that's not a black and white answer, but I think it does depend. Um, Andrew Webster, the comment about the exec being part of it and leaders is such an important call out. Alan, thank you. At times we're pushed to get it done, whereas it's a process that requires everyone. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think this is a huge organizational change for everybody, Andrew. And, some people will be comfortable with this and others will be less comfortable, and that's okay. But I think it's important to not forget that an executive in role X or Y is really good at what they do. And those executives who feel less comfortable with AI should be supported to get their heads around this and to move forward. There will always be other executives within the organizations who can do things better than others because people are more technically savvy than others. So I think the support is really important. Um, Justin Spangaro, thanks, Justin. There's often seems to be a tension between centralization versus democratization of AI capability. Do you build an AI center of excellence or diffuse AI and raise all boats? What are your thoughts? I think it depends on the organization. I met with an executive from Macquarie Banking and Financial Services in Sydney last week. And typical Macquarie, they decided 18 months ago that they were, going to go deep into AI. And what they've done is they've looked at every area of the SDLC. So requirements gathering, software engineering, testing, design, and they've overlaid AI across every single area of the SDLC. Now, what they've done is they've rolled out a Google AI solution to 5,000 people. And they've really started to work with those business leaders across sales, marketing, operations risk to really get to a point where everybody within the organization is AI savvy. But that's a huge journey. So I think I'm not sitting on the fence. It depends on the organization. It depends on the size of the organization. But that's what Macquarie have done. Mark Clouting, thank you, Mark. Well-structured session. Thanks, Helen. Thought-provoking data is properly skewed by the Oz understanding, implied productivity. Many leaders, organizations not understanding upset. Yeah, I agree. But, the data that we've tried to bring together is data from an Australian perspective. I don't think there's a real value in me banging on about the US because I'm here to help people with Australian problems. Sam Waldemar. Thanks, Sam. How much transformation within business is now being driven by AI based on your conversations with transformation leaders? Okay, so let me give you an example, Sam. Or I'll give a couple of examples. So certain organizations are looking at how they can transform operations, but in operations, you need to have the right systems, processes, and procedures in place before you actually overlay the AI to accelerate. So that's one example. Other organizations in technology are looking at their SDLC, and we're at the tail end of a search now where that's what they're going to do, like the Macquarie example. So I think it depends on the organization, and it really goes back to what are the use cases and where are the opportunities for the organization. And I think, yeah, it's great to go after the use cases which get the most bang for buck, but some organizations may want to start with the least risk use cases first. Arun Degala. Hi, Arun. Thank you very much. So great session, very informative. I'd be interested to hear from your vantage point. So first question is what types of new AI data roles are you seeing the most growth in Australia right now? And so I'll answer that first question first. What I'm seeing is it depends on the organization, but I'm seeing the intersection of data and AI and making sure that you get the data right first, and then making sure you've got the right processes in place before you look to scale and accelerate it with AI. And then obviously, I've mentioned that SDLC example, and there are some examples in operations as well. Question two for leadership roles, what are the skills or capabilities employees priorities and particularly beyond core technical experience? I think it's about organizational change. This is a huge organizational change for everybody involved. So, how does a leader? I'll give you an example. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was about to do an in-person event, and then the pandemic happened, and we were all, we needed to work from home. And in Victoria, we all know how that went. So at the time, there was an executive who I know who joined. We pivoted quite quickly to an in-person event to a webinar format. And this executive explained to me that they had a team of 250 people. They've been used to managing global teams. So we're used to managing people in different countries and what have you. The challenge was with this person's team leaders and their team leaders were not used to leading people without that physical line of sight. So it wasn't that he didn't know what to do, it was he was drinking from the fire hose in terms of coaching and helping his leaders in terms of what to do. So, in summary, I think it's being a leader and make sure that as a leader that you can help technical teams, the business, and understand that we need to meet everybody where they're at and we need to help people move forward. And it's not as simple as it says, but that's my opinion. Um, Igor Knezovic, the Read the Macquarie example, is there any material or experiences on that journey? I'll give you a call, mate. I don't want to share anything which is not in the public domain, so I'll give you a call over the next few days and we'll have a chat about that. We've got Bridget again. My belief is that AI is an organizational competency. It takes time to get good at a new competency. It's not really different to previous waves, such as continuous improvement journeys. So the important thing is to start being bringing everyone on the journey, bring value incrementally, and understand that it would take 5 years to get really good AI transformation. I agree, Bridget. I think, it's an organizational competency. There have been previous waves, continuous improvement, agile, what have you, and it will take a time for organizations to get, adept at this. And we don't know how long, this is going to evolve for. So it's a bit of a, open book in that regard. Shafika Syed, very insightful, Alan. Thank you for sharing these real data from other organizations. My question is in terms of transformation, is there any negative outcome you have known, any negative outcome you have known or things that need to rethink AI implementation, like the most common mistakes you see when leaders try to scale too early or without the right conditions? I think it's normal that when organizations try to scale or try the agentic approach, that there will be challenges. And I think Australia, we are quite a conservative country with regards to getting that right. And that's, certainly not a negative comment. I think it's good in lots of ways. Lots of being like a number of cybersecurity breaches, and we need to be careful. Um, so I think it's just making sure that you have the right rails in place. I'm seeing some really good examples in software delivery where organizations are trialing Claude Code, for example, in proof of concepts, and they're getting themselves ready to scale. Kania, last question. So Kania Kokani, Thanks, Alan, for such an insightful session. How does one assess and evaluate the ROI for a agentic AI use case that is not as straightforward as traditional or automation? Kinnear, I'll try my best to answer this question, given, I'm an executive recruiter and not a technical person. I'm working on a role at the moment, which is a significant AI overlay, and the organization are looking to accelerate, delivering the SD over the SDLC by overlaying AI over a period of time, over a 2-year horizon. One of the candidates who I interviewed talked to me about agentic and talked about the concept of adversarial agents. And my understanding in layman's terms is you have agents checking the work of the other agents, and how that works. So I think that's really interesting, but it's only a concept I learned about within the last 5 to 10 days. So I think there's lots of things that we can all learn. And I think, you know, organizations working together and sharing use cases is really, really powerful. I know that, Macquarie, Commonwealth Bank, West Farmers, those organizations have been talking to each other. I make the automatic assumption that other organizations in other industries will talk to each other and share what they can. And I think that's a good thing, so everybody can learn how to move forward. So it is now 4 minutes to one. I am actually going to stop the webinar because I did promise it'll only run for 45 minutes. Thank you very much for attending. All attendees or people who are registered will get a copy of the recording and the slides, which my EA, Kim, or myself will send it to you most probably tomorrow. And yeah, really appreciate this. Thanks for attending. Having a great afternoon. Enjoy the weather and wherever you are in Australia. And we'll speak to you soon.